Buenos dias. My name's Hugo. I'm currently a PhD student, and I would like to give an easy talk before lunch and leave you to think about how we talk, specifically in internet governance communities. First of all, internet governance happens in the open. This is driven by policies, standards, and protocols that are published by ICANN, ITF, W3C, different bodies. And these policies have huge deliberation processes that takes years, 2 or 3 years, more. People jump in, jump out of the conversation. We have different working group chairs. And my question for today is, I'm interested in this deliberation process, specifically in the conversation that this generates. These ones are publicly archived through mailing lists, GitHubs, the transcripts that the ICANN provides. And my question for today is, how can we analyze what these conversations reveal about the deliberation process? First of all, the speed at what does the community interact. It can be at the beginning, the middle, or at the end. If it's some trending topic that the community is really engaged but suddenly fades away, or if certain agenda, specific timing, the need progresses as time goes on, or something happens and you need a deadline to be met and everyone gathers at the end of the conversation. But not that, but also the sentiment of replies between the participants. This is important because now that we have broad community, we might be able to pinpoint whether we have geopolitical tensions in the conversations. Ultimately, these patterns, the speed and the sentiment, we can start to be associate to which ones end up in publications of these policies. My study case for today is the ITF, 18 years of mailing list data. The ITF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, it's open and consensus-driven body that is more focused on building standards for the internet. Anyone can submit a draft, and the heavy work happens in the mailing list. The drafts are revised through community feedback and feedback also from the working groups. And if there is consensus, this is published as an RFC. So today I will present you how the ITF talks, how the deliberation process happens in the ITF. First of all, what is a conversation in the ITF? For a conversation, I group all of the emails related to a specific draft and treat them as one conversation. From that, we got 11,000 conversations throughout the 18 years out of 2.5 million emails. And from those 11,000 conversations correspond to 11,000 drafts the community has worked on. 6,000 of them resulted in publications of an RFC, and actually it's 5, end up in drafts. First of all, let's talk about how the speed of the conversation goes. Here we have our share of conversations. We have 3 types: late, progressive, and early. This can happen, the interactions at the beginning, if everyone is really engaged in a progressive side, or everyone jumps in at the last part of the conversation. The dash part are conversations that didn't end up in publication. My takeaway here is that late conversations are increasing and more likely to end up in publication. As you can see, in the early 2000s, the ITF used to engage in a progressive way. As time progresses, the ITF moved towards having late conversations. But this is also a reflection on how complicated the policy development has worked, because we're looking now at conversations of 2-3 years plus. And also, for example, in the early conversations, everything is practically non-published. We further observe that this is just because the drafts are not getting adopted by working groups. So it doesn't get enough interaction and the conversations just ends. Next, how does the community respond to each other? Here we compute the sentiment of replies of each of the emails, and we observe 2 big groups. We call them flat and dynamic. Dynamic, we have really positive or really negative responses in the conversation. In the RFCs, we have this policy is so good, we love it, or really bad interactions. we hate it, no? We see the sentiment of this. So dynamic conversations, we have really positive, really negative responses. In contrast, flat conversations just stay the same. They have the same sentiment of reply. Here we have our share of conversations, solid its publications, and dashed are non-publications. What we see here is that the ITF moves toward more flat conversations. They are less having emotional responses in this deliberation process. And we also observe that the community is having more of this share as well, of flat, and heavily penalizing dynamic, as we observe that in the years of 2016 and 2023, most of the conversations end up in rejection. But these two graphs show us macro tendencies on how the ITF works, but we can also do an analysis on a regional perspective. Next one. Given that we have geopolitical tensions around the globe, we wanted to see if this is reflected in the ITF. And we observed that it doesn't. The blue one are responses from the US to the community. The red ones are China to the community, Europe in green, and the rest of the community in brown. We observe that in the ITF, we have really neutral to positive sentiment replies in the community. So we observe that no, if we have geopolitical tensions around the world, in this technical community, we don't. They move towards having neutral conversations. Ultimately, my takeaway on this plot is that the more data we have around the conversations, we can start predicting which ones can result in publication. Right now, our takeaway is around 70, 80 messages. We can start associating patterns to which one will result in publication. My takeaway is here on the ITF. The ITF has recurrent temporal and sentiment patterns that have shifted over time and show us how the deliberation process have worked. The sentiment of replies has gone from neutral to positive, but also there are no geopolitical tensions in the ITF, or at least this signals us that it's neutral community. And that these structures can be associated with which ones are more likely to end up in a consensus, in publication. Consensus, no. Consensus, it's another process. Ultimately, during these 2 days in the ICANN, I consider that this could be useful, not just to the community, but to the working group chairs as well, to give visibility on how the conversations are unfolding on the policy development process. As here we have really diverse community, and we might have stances on agreement, disagreement, and maybe political tensions. We don't know. But we can analyze, and this visibility gives us how is the community engaging, and it could be useful to the working group chairs to see what is happening, how to drive the conversation, and this is a start to build on consensus, how it's unfolding. And thank you very much. This is all from my side.
Thank you, Hugo. Question? Yes, please.
Hi, Chris Buckridge. I'm an ICANN board member. I've been in various communities for a while. So thanks, Hugo, for this. I think this is really interesting and important work, I think, because we have to look at these multi-stakeholder policy developments processes as systems. And I think we really need to focus a little bit more on understanding how those systems work, how they evolve over time. The IETF is obviously quite distinct from ICANN, and I think that your sort of last few slides are noting that. But in another sense, the IETF probably offers a slightly more rigid, maybe, or static system that we can look at and think about how that translates to ICANN. There's a few things, there are any number of things that jumped out, but one that really jumped out to me was the shift towards more discussion later in the process. And I think that's something that really, if it translates to ICANN as well, something to pay a lot of attention to, because obviously the later people come into a process and provide their feedback, provide their input, the more difficult it can be to then go back and start at the beginning or rework things. So it's important to have those opportunities later in the process, but it benefits everyone to come in earlier in the process and be part of it. So I think just understanding if that shift is happening is really useful. So thank you.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. So the idea is to do this analysis on the ICANN and to see the trends that happen as well. There are multiple factors why the ITF is moving towards late conversations, but also because of context. So 3-4 years of development, no one is looking to what is being discussed in the first year. But we can leverage also with LLMs to give summaries, to analyze, to have stances. But the idea is to see these trends and how the community is evolving. And having this, we can start to know how we will attack the consensus and speed up the process. So that's the idea. It's a start.
Yeah, over here. Hugo, thank you for the presentation. Hisham Ibrahim, RIPE NCC Chief Community Officer. This is very interesting work. We at the RIPE NCC, we've done similar work where we've looked into sentimental analysis of policy discussions over the past 30 years. The idea was to see how the community mobilizes and reacts to different topics and when they do and when they don't. Also for topics related to legitimacy as the community active and for very various reasons. We've done this work and it was very well received by the community. I also know the IETF was interested in the work that we did, and they're asking my colleague that's done this to do that work. So I think since you've done work like this on the IETF, I don't know if you're in contact with them, but if you're not, I might be able to put you in contact with people because I know they're looking to exactly what you're trying to find here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we can have a talk at the end. Yeah.
So I had a bit of a methodology question because I didn't quite understand the nuance. When you say it's a later conversation, are those new entities or individuals coming into the conversation, or is it just the amount of conversation? Because I participate in the ITF, many of my staff do. We are early, we are middle, we are late. The input we give into the conversation really depends on where the complexity is and where we get to actually pushing that consensus around details. So I'm wondering if whether it's new people or it's the same people across the thing would make a difference. And I wasn't sure what your methodology was.
Yeah, so regarding the late conversations, these are where most of the messages happen. So in 3+ years, they're happening in the last year of development. I don't know specifically if the share of new people jumping in, jumping out, but we've seen that this is also because the draft is more mature. So when it's later on, it attracts more attention. So these are the highlights.
In this world of PII, I don't know if you can still actually see who's behind each thing, but I think that's an interesting data point because I know my guys, they're spread right across that spectrum. So yes, that could tell you that getting to the final consensus takes more interaction these days, but it could also tell you that there are new people coming late to the game. So it's interesting. And we have a ITF liaison on the board who I could happily introduce you to, and they're members of the Internet Architecture Board, etc., walking around. So you can actually get to meet these people this week.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Hola.
Hola.
I have a question. You mentioned that ICANN and IETF publish these outcomes. Okay. How do these two organizations coordinate to ensure their policies and technical protocols do not conflict or overlap? And now we have RIP NCC.
So the ICANN, RIPE, and the ITF, they have different objectives. The ICANN is on assign names and numbers. And the IANA has all the numbers, and the IANA gives these to the regional registries, which is RIPE and the different operational registries. The ITF works more on the technical side, on protocols that makes the internet work. HTTPS, TLS, have conversations because they are members of the ITF, but overall in the objectives, they work in different perspectives. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, because I know the answer. Yes.